You are at war with yourself and likely don't realize it. Your thoughts, beliefs, habits, and actions often sabotage you. Are they helping you overcome adversity or setting you up for failure? To win this battle, you must connect with your inner warrior. We all have a warrior within us, one that strengthens our resolve and helps us to rise to meet life's challenges. If you're just surviving rather than thriving, then it's time to embrace the warrior archetype, live the warrior ethos, and ascend. If you are a veteran, first responder, or someone looking to take charge of your life, find your tribe, and then be the hero of your own story, this podcast is for you. Join Mike Kinney and Matt Hastings, two retired U.S. Army officers who served in U.S. Army Special Operations and Army Aviation units, as they share with you optimal performance practices they learned in their time with the Military and Warriors Ascent, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps veterans and warriors with PTS.
Well, all right, everyone. Welcome to the Warriors Ascent podcast with your hosts, Mike and Matt. We're back with Anna Savianno, the one, the only. Going to dazzle us with more DBT. It's going to be great. Yes. No, but let me start by asking this. This month, right? This season, I should say, it's a lot of, community, tribe. We talked about, your five people, the people that you want to be around the most, or the fact that you are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. And the absolute criticality of healthy boundaries and a variety of things. So that belongingness and community is very, very important. Well, that begs the question, of course, well, how is it that you establish those bonds? How is it that you aren't, I'll say the community pariah, and I know there are probably a ton of people out there that have had adverse interactions with people. Maybe they're the same people, maybe they're difficult people, and you're thinking to yourself, well, hey, I want good community and connection, but I don't know the first thing about how to foster and cultivate those relationships. Or maybe that's not the case, and most people are pretty socialized. But invariably, you're like, oh man, hey, that didn't go so well or whatever. So interpersonal effectiveness is what I'm getting at. And if you feel that you're lacking, in that department, it's a good thing that you're here, because Anna's going to get us all up to speed on that.
Sure.
Appreciate that, man. So let's start with interpersonal effectiveness. Again, Heartland Therapy Connection. That's where Anna hangs her hat. She runs things.
That's right.
Hell yeah, boss lady. Appreciate her.
Thank you.
All right, now let's go right into the substance.
Okay. Can we talk about the mindfulness real fast?
Yes, you can talk about
your. I do think that
you can talk about whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the last episode, we talked about the mindfulness mindfulness skills, the how and what skills, which is, again, the foundation of all of it. So we want to make sure that you're still paying attention to those how and what skills, what you're doing and how you're doing it, that you're observing and describing and noticing, and that you're doing it effectively, mindfully, non-judgmentally. And that is the fundamental part for interpersonal effectiveness too. So you have to be noticing what's going on with the person you're talking to. You're paying attention. You're making eye contact. You're not just plowing ahead without that awareness. And so that we want to keep coming back to the mindfulness skills with every other skill that we kind of layer on. Mindfulness is still part of it. So 2 sets of skills in interpersonal effectiveness. We have the give skill, which is to maintain the relationship, and the fast skill, which is to maintain your self-respect. Ideally, all of your interpersonal interactions would meet would take care of all the things. You would get what you want, you maintain your self-respect, you maintain the relationship. We know that that's not how everything goes.
Right.
So most of the time you're going to want to set some kind of priority. Pick one or the other of the give or the fast skills, which is the more important thing. So the example that I always use, which is a little outdated now because my kid has evolved, but when he was younger, the thing that he wanted to talk to me about was Minecraft. It's like, what is that game called?
Yes.
And I don't care at all about Minecraft, and I don't really understand it, and I can't play it. However, I love him. So using that give skill, when he wants to talk to me about it, that I am listening, that I'm present, that I'm gentle, so you're paying attention, acting interested, act as part of that. It does not mean that you have to be like in your heart interested in Minecraft or whatever the person that you care about is telling you. It does mean that you're paying attention. Validate. So that is, I see you, I hear you. I might repeat what some of the things are that you're saying so that I'm showing you that I'm listening.
Right.
Eye contact, and then using an easy manner. So you're not like, you could probably demonstrate, it's not like this.
Like this.
It's,
or like this.
right. You
hand.
kind of
hand.
like
Exactly.
more relaxed, laid back. Your tone of voice matters. Pausing to listen for a response matters. So using that easy manner is the way to make that relationship sustainable and make it feel good for the other person. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree. None of that says like that you have to do what they say or that you have to believe the same things. It's just it's a way of listening and interacting is the GIVE skill.
Yeah.
No, I like that. All of this, this entire rubric, I'll say, in that on one hand, as you pointed out early on, it's like, all right, here's how to have, a good interaction, which I'll say caters for, the one individual. The other is geared towards, which I'm sure you'll get into soon, is, all right, well, hey, I also need to have either healthy boundaries or assert myself and not just be a doormat, because I think some people either think that, well, to get along with people, you just need to be totally complacent
Sure.
or a complete pushover, and then people will like you. When in fact, A, that's not always the case. People don't respect that. And
Right.
B, you have no self-esteem and you're not having your equities catered for.
Well, and so the people who come to Warriors Ascent, oftentimes, and not all of them, have different relationship issues. Some may be with their employer. And it's like, if you don't go to this and do past this, and you don't have a job anymore.
Right.
And so a skill in learning how to be interpersonal effective with their leadership is a very, big life skill we can teach
Right.
here. But in particular, like you said, don't let somebody be, walk over the top of you at the same time being gentle. I mean, I tend to have a problem with this because I have a big, deep voice. I'm a big guy.
Sure.
When I speak, when I'm being serious, I see some people feel like I'm intimidating them, and it's like, I'm just being me,
Yeah.
So
I get that all the
I
time.
sometimes have to
Well, there's I'll
gentle
say
down and
a
stuff.
military subculture to it too, which is, hey, just get to the point, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's, well, because we've all seen the opposite, which is people that are, I don't really want to hurt you. And you're finally just like, man, just tell me, what is the deal?
what's
And you
the
don't want
bottom
people to
line
be
up front?
disrespectful. Like,
Right.
I think you're a complete, a-hole or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, all right, hey, just cut to the chase and just come out with it for heaven's sake. But I'll say the antithesis or, the correlate to that, is, I'll speak for myself, rather than being blunt, sometimes you're like, all right, don't, and we all know, don't attack the individual. It's their behavior that you're addressing. That's the important thing. So, hey, you're effed up. No, it's
when you do
when
that.
you did this, man, that is not the standard,
yeah.
And there's some, that's still direct. It's still not even maybe super gentle, but at least it's not,
But that's, in that example, you're not trying to maintain the relationship. That would be a different skill to give directions, to get what you want and all of that.
Okay.
So part of all of this skillfulness is assessing the situation to say, well, what is called for? Because if I'm your
Right.
boss and I need you to just do a thing, or you're the person checking me out at Target, like, I'm not trying to have this ongoing relationship with you. I'm just
Right.
trying to get the thing
Right.
done.
Interact.
Right. And so knowing what situation calls for what is part of the nuance of, the program that we do and just doing the work in general is to figure out, well, what is this? Because sometimes I do have to be direct. Time is of the essence. You don't have time to say a bunch of extra words. You just need somebody to write the plane. Or it's your kid and I need to listen and be present and all of that. So it is a huge piece of
Right.
assessing the circumstances
right.
and proceeding.
And that's the stuff that takes
Mindfulness.
and
Right.
attention.
Yeah.
No, but there are two things, whether they be anecdote that come to mind. One is I've heard people say in some circumstances, and to your point, it depends on the circumstance. Sometimes it's better to be kind than it is to be right. And I'll be honest with you, oftentimes I bristle at that because Matt and I have been in, a business where I don't care about being kind. I care about being right because, not to speak for you, but if you're doing a check ride with someone and they're screwing up, lives are at stake. So that's one example.
I've seen a lot of really good people that I've failed.
No, exactly. And you're not so interested in, you don't want to go like, you're the worst pilot I've ever seen, but you can't be, I don't want to hurt your feelings. It's like, no, you've not met the standard because you could kill somebody. The other one was more relationship wise. I mean, that's a relationship too, but I was in a Centurion's leadership program as an example, right? And my mentor, good guy, Army guy, UMKC business professor, he said to me, he pulled me aside, military guy to military guy. He's like, hey, listen, sometimes it's better to safeguard the relationship than it is to come up with the optimal solution. He's like, I'm never going to go and say, if there's a course of action or a recommendation that's illegal or immoral or, oh my God, this is just going to be disastrous, that you go with that. But all things being equal, if you see a solution that maybe is what you feel in your judgment is the best, but everyone around you in the group wants to go with something maybe a little less, but they're all bought into it,
do it.
You might want to do that because then it's an investment in the relationship as well.
Right.
Totally.
And that I thought was like, thank you very much for that. That's sage advice.
I like you take it back to a relationship with a child and something that I'm not interested in this, but let's say your romantic partner of any kind comes home and is talking about their job, and you can never report back anything. So it's kind of clear you never listen to me, Right. These are these easy things. I think they're in a relationship, just like seriously listen, give the cues like you would want to listen back and forth. Mindfulness, I guess that's a great word for it.
Yeah, that's part of it, for sure.
But when you tell a story and the other person says like, who are you talking about? Or who's that? Or what's this? It's like, it's very frustrating because now I just don't even want to talk to you about this whole section of my life. Because there's no, I guess, reason to,
Well, and I think it gets into where, we talk a lot about skills and all of that, but everybody comes in to Warriors Ascent or therapy or wherever with not just the day-to-day problems, but what's all the historical stuff, trauma from your job, stuff from your childhood. I do want to talk to you about your mom.
The distal antecedents.
That is never how I describe it. But it's what's the old stuff that's still messing with you. And that if you're in a relationship where I'm talking and you are continually not hearing me, that can lead to bigger problems because it often does tap into old stuff, and so then you might think it's no big deal. Like, what do I care about who you work with or whatever, but they might have a whole pattern of nobody's ever listened to me. Nobody ever cared about me. And then, then you have a way big problem.
And those are the cognitive distortions.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. No, those are good points. But even in mindfulness, with Amy, she talks about intention, attention, and attitude. And intention is what you bring to your, mindfulness practice. But, attention, same thing. It's just like, even in, a dialogue with somebody. I mean, if you and I are talking and I'm like, and I'm acknowledging versus doing this, I'll tell you, that just drives me insane.
You know what it is in today's day and age is it's a phone.
Sure.
Right. And so you're maybe everybody is engaged and that thing goes off and you just instantly see it. And they're just struggling not to look. And then it's like, just look. And I think that's another very tough thing that I guess our life is throwing in front of us to make things harder. But
But that act.
If you could just put that thing down, like
to your point,
people my age, I hate having a phone near me, but
yeah,
some people just can't live without it. And I don't know. I think sometimes there should just be like an hour of no phone time or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Some people do that.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea for sure. Do you want to talk about fast?
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. This is the other interpersonal effectiveness skill. This is the one for maintaining your self-respect. So when the priority is establishing some boundaries, maintaining boundaries, saying something that is maybe hard to say, but important so that you can kind of stay in alignment with your own values is to use the FAST skill. So starts with be fair, no apologies, stick to your values, and tell the truth. So be fair is pretty straightforward. It's you want to stay away from like, you always do this or you never do that. You are being fair and keeping it about what's this thing. We're not talking about everything from forever. No apologies is a little tricky because, of course, if you are disrespectful or unkind or whatever, you should apologize. But it's not the apologies that this is talking about. It's like, I'm sorry for being alive. I'm sorry for having any feelings. I'm sorry I asked.
Right.
That's sort of like,
I'm tired for wanting to be treated fairly.
Yes. So that's the kind of apologies that we're staying away from. Exactly. It's like, this is an apology, or I'm sorry that you had to deal with this thing that isn't anything to do with you. I'm sorry it's cold outside. Well, I mean, you're not in charge of the weather. So apologies start to lose any kind of efficacy if we're throwing it out all the time, right? Stick to your values. First of all, you have to know what your values are.
Right.
So
That's important.
Brene Brown has a great list. And when you were talking about earlier about being kind or being right, she says the clear is kind. Have you heard this from her?
No.
Which is like the FAST skill and just being clear. Say what you mean and mean what you say and just move on, like with the right intention. But that is, people want that. They want that kind of clarity, and that feels good. So sticking to your values, knowing what those are, there's lots of ways to, I mean, we do card sorts, there's lists, there's places to really look at what matters to me. And I think that speaking to your like day and age and people in the world now, we don't know. You get told what matters, but like, is that what you believe matters? Depends. And then tell the truth is, don't lie, one thing. But the other side of that is to really speak your own truth. So where do you want to go to dinner? Oh, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, who's had that conversation and it's like the worst.
Right.
And so to speak your truth and to have an opinion and to know what that is also how you maintain your self-respect, because otherwise you can end up trampled on, or you can end up kind of just in the backseat of your own life, not getting your needs met or not getting what you want or any other thing. And that, I mean, obviously at some point that starts to feel really bad.
Yeah, that compounds.
Exactly.
I mean, advocating for yourself,
Right.
is really the crux of it. And just being forthright about that. And then, where it says no apologies, not feeling guilty because you've got certain needs that you feel should be met.
Or you do feel guilty, and that's okay because it's just new territory, because you can't always not feel bad speaking up for yourself. It's a new skill that people have to develop. I mean, if you have not been able to ask for what you need, or you got knocked around or made fun of or whatever whenever you spoke up, then it is going to be uncomfortable. And it's that dialectics of like, it's okay to be uncomfortable. And then, in emotion regulation, we talk about justified and unjustified emotions, which is like a whole thing. But here's where it makes sense to feel guilty. And here's where it's probably something old or whatever.
No, that's interesting.
I think sometimes too, when you have people that just have contrasting beliefs and they don't even know it.
For sure.
For instance, I would look at someone, and my mantra, everybody knew this in the military, is say what you mean what you say. Let's get to it. Bottom line up front. I don't want a bunch of song and dance. And I would use that, at home. And that's
maybe not what your home people signed up for.
No, or like, it's like there's a good way to deliver something, and you could, I'd say Gucci it up sometimes. I don't want to Gucci it up, I want to say it straight out, but it's like that doesn't really work all the time.
It's not,
Or what you say, maybe that person isn't capable of receiving it because I don't know why. But when you say something like that, it makes such logic to me. That person tears down, and it's like, I just don't understand why you can't be direct. I don't understand. Then there's a conflict.
Right. Well, and it's not effective, to speak to the mindfulness skills again, to think that you can talk the same way at work, at work in an emergency, at work when you're all sitting around, at home with your partner, at home with your 10-year-old, with the person we can't do the same with every single person. So you have to be able to kind of attune to what's happening so that you can be effective and do what needs to be done in this situation.
Yeah.
No, and that's some of the stuff that we talked early on about the archetypes, the warrior archetype, and how And if you bring the warrior to every situation, that's going to be very dysfunctional.
Right.
And, you know, hey, we spend our lives and our career, you know, I'll say honing that where, you know, if I was on my detachment and I was like, guys, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I think we need to, they'd look at, you know.
Sure.
Where you're like, all right, here's what we're doing, you know, but much to your point, you can't bring that back home, as we've said, and apply that same persona or archetype or whatever, you know, to every situation. It's just not optimal.
I feel like that lesson comes eventually, but it's just a matter of how hard and intense it comes, or how many times you have to hear it.
How willing are you to hear that lesson?
Or, yeah, exactly. How thick is your skull? But I think there's people teetering on the edge, you know, that may feel some of this stuff and understand, like, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I appreciate bringing these up. And I like how they're broken down into self-respect.
And I think it's really hard because there's a lot of messages that people come into the cohort with about how you're supposed to be and what does it mean to be a man or a woman in the military or whatever. And there's all of that you got to unpack it and figure out, well, what actually matters?
Right.
That's that values piece. Well, how do you want to show up in your life? Not how were you raised or what did your, you know, crew tell you to be or whatever.
Right.
But what's actually going to work for you, because you're the one who has to live your life in your house with your people or not if you don't do a good job of it, you know? So
I think there's a concept, you know, like roles and stuff too. And I think I'll speak for myself, but I think I speak for others as well, is this notion that I think people feel maybe disingenuous if they're one way at work or they align themselves with a certain persona or archetype. And they're like, hey, you know, I'm a CW4, you know, aviator, airborne ranger, green beret, whatever. And you're like, hey, this is the way I am. This is the way I'm wired. This is how I behave. And there you go. And part of, I think, the experience at Warriors Ascent is number one, the information, most certainly.
Sure.
But the other is just almost giving people permission or license to say, hey, listen, you don't need to be that guy at every, actually, it's not recommended that you be that guy in every situation. It's okay to not be that guy or gal 24/7. And people kind of look at you like,
Sure?
yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, it's to the contrary. You're much better served being that guy or gal in that role where it's optimal and expected. But when you're home or with the kids or you're with your spouse, that's not saying you should be, again, getting back to your values. Stick to your values. Those shouldn't, you know, vacillate. But your interaction and your social skills and your demeanor and the way you interact with people, I would imagine you want to optimize based on who it is that you're interacting with and under what circumstance.
I think early in my career, I was really good at separating it, you know. And then after time, you know, you just get ingrained, and then
you become institutionalized.
You're institutionalized. You've gone up the ranks and the channels, and you've got way more responsibility and accountability on you now. And it's
well, and I would
it's hard not to carry around.
And I imagine too, like traumatic events, maladaptive, unhelpful things happen, and it gets stacked up, and it's just as like throwing trash over a wall. You're not.
It is.
So then, by the time you're however many years into your career, this is all full over here, and none of it's been dealt with. So you have to keep it compartmentarized, right? Because otherwise, you'll fall apart.
Right.
It's and then you fall apart and you
I
come
would
to
say
work.
it's a backpack. I throw it in and I'll deal with it later, you know, and then it gets so heavy.
Right. And then when does later come? What does that mean?
Well, exactly. I think it's kind of a gruesome way to think, but flying, you know, combat helicopter pilot, I didn't know I was coming home. So I just was thinking that maybe I'm just going to give it everything I got because I may not come home tonight. So I didn't really care about long term. You know, I was a smoker.
Yeah.
I didn't really care because people say, hey, that stuff's going to ruin your health. I'm like, yeah.
Well, I'm going to die by 35 anyway, so who cares? I think that is, I mean, I hear that from all sorts of people all the time. And I think that it's adaptive up to a point, right? Because you kind of have to do your job.
Yeah.
Set aside some of those things. Like you can't be thinking about what it's going to be like when you're 60 because you wouldn't be able to do your job.
Right.
But then when you come home or retire or are done with that tour, needing to step back and kind of check it out to see, okay, well, what's there do I need to sort through? Because if I keep just stacking it up and not caring, going to fall apart.
and
Health problems, mental health problems.
I think of our first responders in this because this is their life, like a military, like you said, it's like, okay, we train every day, but we usually come home. But there's deployments, there's some field exercises that last a couple of weeks or something. But I mean, first responders are doing this and coming home every single day for 20, 30 years. And so
stacks up.
I know how hard that is, to change who you are at home now.
Right.
So.
And a lot of, I'll say, the criteria or part of doing that job is the ability to, when required, compartment those emotions. And I think where people go awry, is when they're like that all the time. Like, all right, hey, if you're on a call and it's gruesome or it's a kid, God bless, you can't go to pieces. You've got to keep it together and be competent and effective, to get things done. And then after the fact, you can process it. But I think what we've come to find with our first responder population is they're never afforded that opportunity. The expectation is now, okay, next call. And then they go home, and much to your point, it's God, I hate to cite that movie Heat, with De Niro and Pacino. But when Pacino is talking to his wife and he says, oh, you expect me to come home and cathartically expel all that heinous stuff? He's like, no, that's not the way it goes. I keep it in here. Keeps me sharp on the edge where I need to be.
Right.
This is
I felt that same thing.
Well, and people don't want to go home until they're people that they love and care about all the terrible things. That's part of it. This is where our group comes in, because those guys then have this space
That was my point.
to talk about it in a safe space where people get it. And I'm not getting the same burden from it because I have ways to manage it and I go and do my thing, but that has to be there for people, especially like people who are currently law enforcement, first responders.
Right. But no, you bring up a great point, and that's part of the, not to the pitch for the program, but that group therapeutic aspect. And, again, another shout out to you for not only what you bring to the program, but then, the stuff that you do for our guys. But you provide them a forum, and that's a great point that maybe isn't as evident. A lot of times they don't share because they feel that they're sparing their family, their wife. That you don't want to hear the stuff that I've been through. And it's not that I don't want to share it, or I don't want to, again, cathartically.
So I don't want to share it, and you don't want to hear it.
Right, and you don't want to hear it. And then having, again, the tribe, the community, wherein they can share that, and not only people aren't appalled, they're like, no, I feel you, brother, I get it. I mean, that's so
to me, important. The group is so powerful. I mean, from my experience, it's like you see another person and go, that person over there, they really have it bad. And then you see them getting better through the thing and experience their celebration with them. And it's just, there's nothing better than watching somebody else and like, and that happened because they're looking around in this huge room and other people are saying the same thing that they're feeling, but they were afraid to say.
Yeah.
Or they didn't know the words to put it into. I get that a lot. You said what I've been trying to say, but didn't know how to say it. You put your finger right on it for me. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I did. Because, I mean, I think there's a lot of us out there.
For sure. And, everybody's situation is different, but nothing is particularly unique because everybody has the same set of feelings, like we all do. Right. And that shared experience allows people to be like, oh, you do get it. Like we didn't do the same things, but I can feel that you get it because we're in this room and we're talking about it. And that's healing.
Powerful.
Yeah.
No,
very powerful. And, here's another thing. I was speaking to like an IT computer programming software kind of guy that was working on his own. And after COVID, and he was feeling all the same stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm telling you, there's a program I go to, would it work for you? But we just really go after this one demographic. And because our charter is to take care of them for their service back, but this is an amazing program that could help all types of humans. It doesn't matter what your job is.
Right.
Well, we've said early and often that while we might serve, our mission might be focused on a particular demographic, or psychographic, what you want to call it, veterans, first responders. But the tools, everything that, Anna and all of the other providers bring to the table are broadly applicable.
To
all mental health.
Humans.
To everyone.
Really
exactly.
I will be so bold.
Yeah, I think it is.
And there may be some uniqueness in terms of the group dynamic wherein, all right, hey, we have people that have very similar shared experiences. But yeah, all of these tools, there's nothing, I'll say, military or first responder specific to any of that.
Right.
So those are great points. So, all right. Hey, in closing, again, another shout out to Heartland
Thanks,
Therapy
Anna.
Connection.
Thanks.
Anna,
Thank you so much for having me.
HeartlandTherapyConnection.com. Appreciate you as always. It's been wonderful. If anyone in the audience wants more from Anna, hey, seek her out, Heartland Therapy Connection.
Man, there's way more to hit with Anna.
Yeah, I
Lots
mean, we
more
covered the
subject.
wave tops, so there's so much more to it, but this was really just I'll just say a superficial treatment of of the stuff. So, hey, thanks, and we'll see you next time with our next guest.
Out. Hi, Matt Hastings here, sending a thank you for watching this episode of the Warriors Ascent podcast. We strive to build a community of warriors made up of our nation's veterans and first responders. And to reach as many of those in need as possible, we need your help. Please just smash that like button and comment or share our content. Warriors Ascent is a Kansas City-based nonprofit that aids veterans and first responders with PTS. I went through this effective program and want those that are struggling to find what I found. Check us out on our website at warriorsascent.org.